Hello, everyone. Today we are speaking to Kat Nagayan. Kat's been on the international school circuit for decades now as a parent and as an administrator. For today's purposes, we're going to talk to her in her role as admissions officer at one of the biggest and most well-known international schools in Southeast Asia, if not the world. So here we go. Let's listen to some of her insights and insider knowledge.
It's great to be here, Adrian. My background is actually in hotel and restaurant administration and food services way before being a chef was cool. So we were expatriated very early on from my husband's career. And so I transitioned into running nonprofit organizations and then eventually into education, where I was the admissions director of one of the biggest schools in Asia, arguably one of the biggest schools in the world, for about a decade. And I'm also the mom of 4 boys. And so with my 4 boys, I've gone through the admissions process more than 30 times, not including the college admissions process. We're just talking international schools here. So you can say that I'm an expert, not just from an administrative side, but also from being a parent. There are many steps to applying to schools, and typically it begins when you realize that you have to find a school. Maybe you're shifting to a new country or a new city. Maybe your child is starting school, or maybe you want your child to have a different educational experience and you're looking at a different school altogether. So first, you're going to do your research, and ChatGPT is going to be very helpful with that now, because you can ask ChatGPT, what are the schools in my area? And it's going to shoot out a list of schools that you can look at. So you're going to do your research, going to find out what's available, and then you're going to narrow that down into schools that kind of fit your criteria. And you're going to go through what we call the inquiry process. That's when you're in touch with the school, you're asking for tours, you're attending open houses, you're getting to know the school, you're talking to admission officers, and also perhaps you're talking to other parents of the school as well. Once you've decided that this is the school for you, or one of the schools for you, then you're going to submit an application and submit all the necessary requirements that the school is looking for. Now, as an admissions director, a lot of times parents say you're asking for a lot of things. However, a school needs to fully understand who your child is, what their strengths are, what their challenges are, what do they like doing, how do they get along with other students, so that the school can think about how can we support the student to be the best version of themselves within our school community. So yes, there will be a lot of information required, and so that's something that you're going to have to put time and effort into. After you've submitted all the requirements, then we have typically what we call the assessment and the interview stage. So there are several grade level appropriate assessments that a student may be asked to complete. And there will also be a more formal meeting between the student, the parents, and the school, so that questions can be asked on both sides. And so there's a clear understanding of expectations, clear understanding of behavior, and just making sure that there is an alignment between the student, the parents, and the school. Once all of these requirements and assessments have been completed, then the application goes through an application review. And for most schools, this is done by committee. So you would have the admissions director involved, you'd have a principal involved, you'd have a teacher involved. And if there are any specific learning needs, for example, ADHD or maybe dyslexia or any other neurodiversity, then the school will bring in a learning support coordinator or a learning support teacher as well. After the committee has reviewed the application, then you will learn what the decision is. So the learning, the placement and the offer, so the decision will depend on whether the school can meet your child's needs, whether there are spaces in the school for your child. For example, if your child is in 4th grade, is there a vacancy in 4th grade for your child? And whether there are programs that your child will fit into. So for example, if your child is an English language learner, is there space in the English language learning department or English language learning class to accommodate your child? So hopefully it's all good and you get an offer from the school. in which case you would respond in a timely manner, and make sure that you submit all the requirements for enrollment this time so that your child can start joining the school. Now, sometimes the school wants to offer a place to the student, but there is currently no space available, in which case the student may be placed in a wait list. So, being on a wait list is not the end of the world. Wait lists do move kind of quickly in international schools, but it's always good to have a backup school for that. Finally, when you've accepted an offer and your child is going to join the school will organize orientation activities to make sure that you and your student, you and your child, know what to expect on the first day of school and know the expectations for you and your family when you join the school community. So that is sort of like the final step in the admissions process, which is the orientation and onboarding experience. Typically, the application process, it's not based on any single factor. It's actually a triangulation of many different factors. So the school will be looking at academic readiness, and you show this through academic records and through some of the assessments that the student will have completed. They're also looking for fit, social emotional fit, character fit, values fit, not just of the school, of the student, but of the parents as well. So that means, do the parents understand what the school's mission is? Do they understand the curriculum and how it is delivered? How do they interact with teachers and staff and administrators during the admissions process? And then for the child, you're also looking at what are the extracurricular activities this child enjoys. How do they form relationships with peers? What has been the feedback? How do they handle challenges? What are their strengths, and so on? So these are like factors that you can't objectively quantify, right? It's this whole complex soup of different things that make up the student and their family. And family is very important because when a student joins the school, it's not just one singular person that's joining the school, it's the family as well. So how you represent yourself as a family and your alignment with the school's mission, vision, and values as a family is very important. If the school is able to determine that they can meet the student's academic, social, emotional needs, and that the student is in alignment with the school's mission, vision, and values, and that the parents are in alignment with the school's mission, vision, and values, then a place can be offered to the student, right? So all things being considered, a place can be offered to the student. Now, the school may have different priorities. For example, if it's an American school, then they might prioritize American citizens if there's a shortage of seats for enrollment. However, if everything is equal, you have two great students and only one place, the tipping factor is often the parents. How did they interact with admissions and with staff and teachers? How did they complete the application? How supportive are they of the school's mission, vision, and values? So, of course, the more aligned the parents are with the school, all things being equal, and there's only one seat, we would go with a parent who is mission aligned with the school. Well, there are several mistakes that parents can make during the admissions process. One is that they may not give themselves enough time to apply. So they'll apply too late and then all seats will be taken. They have no other options. And so knowing the school's admission calendar is going to be really helpful for avoiding that mistake. The second one is very, very, very grievous, and that would be hiding or falsifying information. So if you don't tell the school everything about your child, whether your child has learning needs or behavioral needs, if you don't tell the school this, then the school won't be able to support your child. So remember that the goal is not just to get the child in school, but for the child to have the best education possible, which means having all their academic and emotional needs met. So don't be afraid to share any concerns about your child's learning and behavior, because ultimately this will help your school meet your child's needs and help them thrive. But on the flip side to that, on the flip side of not disclosing enough information, is also disclosing too much information. So if you think about a school, we used to handle 1,200 applications a year. If you think about the volume of applications that schools handle, if you're submitting 100 pages of documents, and there's so much information there that is not really necessary, that is also going to hurt your child's application. So having someone who can advise you on what is best to put forward, what should be, what are some of the points that you need to highlight in an application, is very, 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 very helpful for you and for the school as well. We actually do want to speak to the child. So there may be a formal interview scheduled with the child. But also, if it's not a formal interview, there will be questionnaires in the application package itself that help us understand the child's personality, the child's interests, where the child thrives. So student voice is very, very important in an interview. Now, sometimes it can be intimidating for a child to speak with an adult. And so having someone that they can talk to before the admissions process kind of helps them familiarize themselves with the interview, and that can make them more relaxed when the interview happens at school. But yes, so short answer to your question, very, very important. The child needs to have a voice. And as a parallel to that, I also want to advise the parents to please do not prep your child. Please do not coach your child as to what to say, because we can tell. We can tell who's been overly prepped or overly coached. The best way is to get the child to practice for an interview by speaking with another trusted adult, or by speaking with maybe a trusted teacher, maybe an educational consultant, to help them get familiar with what it's like to be speaking to an adult in an interview situation. A big misconception is this is all about grades, this is all about the best and the brightest students. That is not the case at all. The admissions process is a holistic process, and it takes into account a lot of different things, like where the student is coming from. It's very contextual, in other words. So it's not purely objective in the sense that if you have good grades, you're in. There's a whole lot of other things we look at, like fit, your values, how can you contribute, how will you contribute to the community, as well as how can we support you to be the best version of yourselves. So all of these make up an admissions decision. It's not purely about grades. And two more things I wanted to touch on. One big misconception is that it's all about who you know. That's not true, actually. So it may help you to get a tour quicker or to get an interview faster if you know somebody, but a school will still be looking at the fit. The school will maintain the integrity of its admissions process regardless of who you know. So that's how good schools operate. And if the school is not operating that way, then you got to think, do you want to be a part of a community where it's all about who you know? And then the third is that, and it's a big misconception, is that the admissions process is designed to keep people out. I think people have this idea that admissions officers are like guard dogs standing at the gates of the school trying to keep people out. That is so far from the truth. The admissions office is your biggest advocate in the admissions process. The more you build a relationship with them, the more they can advocate to you. We actually put a face to the name. We tell the story behind the grades, so that when we meet as a committee with the principal, with the teachers, we're not just looking at Adrian who has C's and D's and an A, but we're looking at Adrian and how wonderful he is in terms of what he can contribute to the school. So because we know that, we've talked to you many times as a parent, and we can advocate for your child through the admissions process. Teacher recommendations are very important. And so it's important in the sense that it tells us, again, who is this child behind the grades? How do they behave in a classroom? How do they handle challenges? What are the things that we celebrate about this student? So these qualitative comments, these comments that tell us about the student, gives us such a bigger picture beyond a report card. Sometimes you get report cards that only have A's or 70, 80, 90. That tells us nothing. It tells us the kid can test very well. But Teacher recommendations, they speak to character. And that's really what schools are looking at now. It's not just grades, it's character. So extremely important. Also, it's best to have a recommendation from a teacher who knows your child and not someone who's high up. Like, I would rather read a recommendation from a PE teacher that really knows the child than to read a pro forma recommendation from a principal or from a head of school. So very, very important. Your conversations as a parent with the school, think of it as every time you're talking to the school, it's actually an interview on both sides. So there are informal interviews where you're just having a conversation, and there may be times when you're asked to come in and actually meet with the school, meet with the committee as a parent. And again, this gives us a whole picture of your child and of your family that helps us to decide, is your child a good fit for the school? Is the school a good fit for the child? And likewise, is your family a good fit for the school? Is the school a good fit for your family? So these two things, very important. Aptitude tests, content-based tests, language tests, interviews, these are all a part of the admissions assessment process. They are important in the sense that they give us another data point. So if you think about international schools or just schools in general, children will be coming from many different places. Sometimes it's from a different country or continent altogether. And we need to understand where they're at in their learning journey. So these tests tell us where your student is at, what they've learned, and what they've learned, for example, if it's a subject-based test, and how they compare to our current school population. So these tests are not pass or fail, but they're another data point in the whole admissions process. So don't be afraid of tests, because tests actually tell us about your student, and they tell us how we can prepare to meet your students' needs from the very first day that they set foot on the school campus as a student. So there are several tests that are typically used in international school admissions. Some of them are aptitude tests, such as, for example, some brand names would be the CAT4 or the ISEE. So these tests assess potential. What is your child's potential for learning in languages or learning in terms of spatial relationships or mathematics? So they're not content-based, but they tell us what your child has the potential to learn. Content-based tests, on the other hand, show how your child engages with grade level material. So this is based on content that is taught to children at your child's grade level. It tells the school where your child is at within their student population, so that, again, we would know which areas your child is strong at and which areas we might need to further support your child. And then you have some language assessment tests, so English language proficiency tests, such as the WIDA, Duolingo. These are very common international school assessments. So they tell us your child's English language proficiency in terms of speaking, reading, listening, and writing English. Now, unfortunately, language tests can be, there will be cutoffs for language tests. So your child may need to meet a certain level of proficiency in order to be admitted to a particular school, and that will be based on their grade level and based on the breadth, how wide a support range the school can provide in terms of English language learning. Lastly, you also have sort of open-ended tests or non-pro forma tests. Often this could be in the form of a writing sample for an older student, a timed writing sample. So they're given a specific amount of time and a couple of topics to write about. They choose a topic to expound on, and then they do their writing assessment. For younger children, it could be a developmental observation. So this is when they come in either individually or in small groups, so that the school can assess whether your child is developmentally ready to be starting school. So are they able to share? Are they able to communicate their needs and wants? Are they independently taking care of their hygiene needs and their self-feeding needs and such. So these are some of the assessments that your school may be arranging for you or may be requiring for you before an admissions decision. I think it's very important for parents to be honest and authentic in their communication with the school, in their dealings with the school. Trying to show a version of yourself that you're not is only going to hurt you and your child in the long run. So, you know, be go in there being your true self, ask the questions that you want, celebrate your child's strengths, express concerns about areas where you're concerned about, because this will actually show the school that you are sincere about the application process, that you want to know whether it's a good fit for your family. And this will only strengthen your understanding of the school. And likewise, it will only strengthen the school's understanding of you. So being authentic and honest is very, very important. And I think the other thing is that you have to remember as a parent that when you're looking at a school, they're also looking at you. So don't feel like don't feel like you're being assessed. Think of it as a two-way conversation with the school. So as you're interacting with the school, think about, how is this making me feel? Am I feeling excited, or is this making me feel, am I bored? So think about all the interactions that you have with the school, and then factor that into your decisions later on when you think about which schools you will apply to or not. That can actually happen with families, and we see that quite often in international schools. And I think it's very important to be working with an admissions director who is honest and who has integrity and who will be able to tell you that this is not going to be a good fit for your child. Some schools can just be after the dollar signs. So you want to make sure that you're working with a person that you trust. And that can also be where working with a third person, such as an educational consultant, can come in very, 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 very helpfully, because an objective third party can maybe let you know these things in a way that is honest and sincere, that some schools may not be able to deliver. Some of the things that I wish parents knew about the admissions process is that, the more authentic you are, the stronger the application is. Admission offices and admission committees remember the really, really good ones, and sadly also the really, really challenging applications. So the more authentic you are, the more you stand out in an application. When you put time into the application, that shows too. We can see that too, whether we're talking about the quality of the photocopies of the report cards that you submit. Some parents submit photocopies that are illegible. They're so light you can't read them, and then we have to chase them for it. So when we see that you've put time and effort and thought into the application process, that really makes you stand out. And of course, kindness and politeness never hurt anyone. People who are kind and polite always stand out. And that's true in the admissions process as well. Oh, and one more thing, asking good questions. So if you are asking questions about the school, we love it when people ask questions, because it tells us what matters to you. So when you're meeting with admissions people, ask questions. The school, the learning, the teachers, the students, ask questions and find out more about the school. Having an admissions consultant can be very helpful for both the family and the school. For the families, these admission consultants, or a good admissions consultant, can help families understand the hidden curriculum or the hidden life behind the school, right? So they will be familiar with the unique cultural nuances of a school. They'll be familiar with how student life goes on in the school, way beyond a website or way beyond promotional material that a school puts out. So that familiarity, very, very important. I would say priceless to have someone advising you about what a school truly is, right? And so also the admissions consultant will help you maximize your application. So they'll help you optimize your application, right? So it's like they will take all of these pieces that you have and show you this is what you need to see. This is what you need to highlight to the school. So they're still helping you present your authentic self, but they're cutting down all the noise and just delivering what's truly important for the school, because they know the school, they know what the school is looking for, so they can advise you on that. And then the admissions consultant will also help you check that your application is complete. It's always very helpful to have another set of eyes look through an application. And so when an application is incomplete, it sort of eats away from your time and from the school's time. And so having that second set of eyes is very important. For the school, it helps the school in terms of communicating with parents, because sometimes some parents are out of the country and time zone differences will come into play. So when you have an admissions consultant or an educational consultant who's advocating for you and who is in the city that your child is applying at, that really helps with the administrative side of the application. Now, I will caution though, there are two things that an admissions consultant or an educational consultant should never do. One is to submit the application for you and go through the process for you. And it's not something an education consultant should be doing. You, as a parent, should still be engaging with the school. And you're consulting, you're getting advice from the education consultant, but you're still directly dealing with the school. And the second thing is that an education consultant should never guarantee that they can get your child into a school. That is unethical. That is not a case at all, because the admission decision is always with the school. And if you have an education consultant who's saying that, then run away, because that person is not looking out for your best interest. Oh my gosh, I would 100% wish I had an education consultant. I told you earlier, I've applied to over 30 schools for my kids. And just, when you look at a website, sometimes it doesn't reflect who the school truly is. And then when you talk to other parents will have different needs for their own students, for their own children. So someone to filter through all that noise and help me identify which schools would be best for what I want for my child and for my family would save me countless hours of stress, would save me a lot of money as well, because I wouldn't have to go travel and see those schools all the time. So an education consultant is definitely something that would have made my life easier as a parent of a student who's applying to international schools. So that's the kind of support that I want. One thing I would like families going through the admissions process to remember is that this is a time for you to celebrate your child. So this should be a fun process. Yes, it can be nerve-wracking. Yes, it can be stressful. But this is a time for you to celebrate your child and your family. Think about all the wonderful things that they've done, all the milestones they've reached, all the just exceptional things that have happened to them, all the development that has happened to them over the years. And make that a joyful message that you want to celebrate when you talk to international schools or when you talk to schools. And if you're not if English is not your first language, then having someone who can translate that joy for you is going to be priceless. Because when you're joyful about your child, when you celebrate your child, then your school can celebrate your child too.
Kat, that was incredible. That was so fascinating. That was so helpful and insightful. Thank you so much for talking to us today, and really just helping families understanding the process and the journey that is to come.
You're welcome, Adrian. It's been a pleasure. As you can probably tell, admissions is still a big passion of mine, because admissions is not just about getting kids into school, it's about helping families. And when you help a family, you're really helping the whole community, the whole society.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.